Hi, I'm Bianca, and this is Flora and Fate, where I take you along to discover cozy, charming towns, scenic escapes, and quiet moments in New England and beyond. There are trails in Maine that people recommend casually, and then there are places people almost seem reluctant to tell you about. Vaughan Woods feels like one of those places. Hidden just outside downtown Hallowell, the trail has quietly earned the nickname Hobbitland among the locals. And after a few minutes beneath the trees, it starts to make sense why. The forest feels unusually alive, not dramatic, not towering, just full of detail. The stone bridges curve gently over running water. Tree roots push through the earth like they've been slowly reclaiming the trail for decades. Sunlight filters through layers of green leaves overhead, breaking apart into shifting patterns across the ground. Everything here feels softened by the canopy, even the sound. The trail begins beside a narrow stream that follows you almost the entire way through the woods. Water slips over rocks and gathers beneath old bridges before spilling further downhill into small waterfalls hidden beneath the trees. You never really stop hearing it, and after a while, the sound becomes part of the pace of the walk itself. Vaughan Woods sits along the edge of Hallowell, one of Maine's oldest small cities, though stepping through the forest makes it feel much further removed than it actually is. The preserve was protected in the early 1900s by the Vaughan family, who wanted the land to remain accessible and undeveloped long after they were gone. That decision shaped everything this place became, because forests like this don't stay this way by accident, especially this close to a town. And somehow, despite the passing decades, the woods still feel remarkably untouched. Not pristine in a curated way, more like a landscape that's simply been left alone for long enough to become fully itself again. The farther you walk, the more the outside world fades behind the trees. The trail curves constantly, revealing things slowly rather than all at once. A moss-covered stone wall, a bridge appearing through the leaves ahead, water catching sunlight beneath the canopy before disappearing back into the shadow. Nothing here feels designed for spectacle. That's part of what makes it so memorable. The beauty stays close to the trail, small enough that you have to keep paying attention to notice it fully. And maybe that's why the nickname Hobbitland has lasted for so long. Not because the woods feel fictional, but because they feel hidden in a way modern places rarely do anymore. There's no dramatic overlook waiting at the end of the hike, no summit, no single landmark people are rushing towards. The trail rewards slower attention instead, the kind where you notice how cold the air will become beside the water, how the bridges seem to merge naturally from the landscape rather than interrupting it, how the entire forest changes color depending on where the sunlight reaches through the trees overhead. Even the water feels alive here. At some point, the stream moves quietly enough to barely disturb the surface. At others, it rushes through narrow sections of rock with enough force to echo through the trees. And everywhere around it, the forest seems to lean closer. Ferns crowd the edges of the trail, moss climbs over fallen branches and old stones. Leaves move overhead in the wind, scattering light across the ground in constantly shifting patterns. It's the kind of place that changes your pace without you realizing it. You stop walking as quickly, you look around more, you start noticing things you would normally pass without a second thought. A reflection in the water, the texture of the wet stone, the way the sunlight briefly catches the surface of the creek before disappearing again. By the end of the trail, it becomes surprisingly difficult to explain why Vaughan Woods feels so different from other forests, On paper, it's simple: a wooded trail, a stream, a few bridges. But walking through it, it feels larger than the sum of those things. Like the forest has somehow held on to an atmosphere that most places lose over time. And maybe that's what makes it one of Maine's true hidden gems. Not because it's impossible to find, but because places that feel this untouched, this immersive, are becoming harder to come across. Until next time, stay curious and stay wild.